third time's a charm. We've started other videos and deleted them because my trusty companions in the back seat would not settle down. But I think he's had enough water to quench his thirst at this point in time and is ready to simmer down so I can try this, at least for a minute. And we don't know about that one. Peppy's a rescue, and she's doesn't do good in the car. It makes her nervous. So the walk was good, and she stopped panting for a while, but now she's back to it, the stress panting again. Yeah, and we're steaming up the windows. It was like 60 something on Monday, and now it's Wednesday, and we have this wintry mix crap. This is the time of year that really kind of annoys me about being in Indiana, because it starts looking like it wants to be spring and then dumps more winter on you. I saw somewhere that possibly up to 1 inch of snow now that it's all melted off out there. This might actually be the same exact spot that I got stuck in the other day. I did a video over here at the park. Was it last week or the week before? Time blends together, I don't know. But there was a bunch of snow on the ground and ice in this lot, and it's like the little bit that I got them out of the car to let them sniff around a little bit was super slick, and they started pulling, and I just started sliding because there was nowhere to to stop and get a little grip. So that was kind of scary. But then we did a video in the car, and when we went to leave, we got stuck. Because it's like the ice, there was like this dip, and that was where my back wheels ended up. So I couldn't get out of it, and ended up having to call the park office because I saw people around when I was driving through. It's like, so I know people were working here that day. It's like, oh, park office. See if somebody can help. And they did. So that was good. And luckily it wasn't a big help. He just had to push me a little bit so my wheel could get up to where the pavement was exposed, which was like 3 feet in front of me, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But that was I was very thankful that he was there, or that he was here and able to do that. And I told the girl that had parked next to me that day what was going on with me, so she happened to get back to her car right at the exact same time this guy shows up, and it's like, hey, I don't know that it'll be an issue for you, but it was an issue for me, and I got stuck. So he's here to help push me out. So you might want to make sure you can still go before he leaves. So it worked out. She was able to get out without a problem. But yeah, I had to have a push. But it was all good. Always an adventure. So my little Zibly over here is feeling much better, and I'm relieved. Like, obviously, I mean, if you've watched any of my videos the past few days, you know that that dog in particular stresses me out if she's not feeling good or whatever. And like, she's so chill most of the time, pretty stoic, and then every now and then, you know, she'll start acting weird, and it's like, oh, what's happening? I don't like this. I don't like this at all. You know, and I know she's got something going on with her liver, because like her numbers, when we had the blood work done, had apparently jumped from the time before. Yesterday, I cried on the vet. The vet called for the results of the urinalysis, and I was all stressed out. It's like, oh, fuck. Cried on the vet, yep. And it's like, I don't know. I always feel bad crying on people too. Usually I'm pretty good. I know this whole YouTube thing would not show you that I'm usually pretty good at not just crying all over people, but I'm usually not that bad about crying all over people. But for whatever reason, when we were talking, about what was going on with Ziva, or like the urinalysis results. She said there was a couple things that were like something about protein in the urine and something else. And I asked her if the potential issues that might point to were things that could be resolved on their own, and she said they were. So that was a little bit of a relief. But then since I said she'd been kind of acting off all weekend, then she was like, "Ooh, maybe we should have her come in and do more blood work." It's like, I don't have that. I have $10 right now. I can't do that. So I didn't laugh. I just cried on that one. But we got home yesterday. I gave everybody baths because they really needed it. And honestly, I was thinking with her, it's like, okay, if there's something going on, and baths always make you feel better, right? I mean, they always get real frisky after their baths and all that stuff. And it'd been a minute, so yeah, I kept putting it off because then we got 10 inches of snow, and then it got like sub-zero temperatures and all this stuff. It's like, I don't want to do it when it's that. Or like when the 10 inches of snow melts off and then it's just standing mud in the backyard everywhere. Yeah, it's hard to get motivated to do it. But yesterday I was like, you know what? I think weather-wise we're good. I think we just need to suck it up and give them their baths. So we did that. And I don't think that's exclusively what made her feel better by any means. I think it did make her feel a little bit better. She was the first one, and when she got out, she was, walking down the hall, shaking it off like she always does, and Taz ran over and collided with her, and, she started growling at him. He's like a bull in the china shop, man, and tear shit up, all that stuff, and our we have laminate flooring, so he just goes sliding everywhere, and he loves it. But those of us that he collides with don't love it so much, so there's a rug in the hallway again. Used to be there, and then Gidge was getting to chase her ball down the hallway when we'd be sitting in the living room, so the rug became more of an ordeal. So then we put it out in the garage, and then when he started colliding into everybody, or they just have a hard time, like as Ziva started running from the carpet, she'd hit the laminate flooring and just like slide into the wall or whatever, or, boxes at the end of it, whatever. And so we put the rug back. But then Dingus here, you Dingus, yeah, he collides with everything. He bull in trying to shop, and he enjoys it. So yeah. See, and that's one of those things too. That's why I'm pretty confident this dog is an Aries, because he's all like ready to like just ram into things, right? The rescue didn't have a birth date down for him, so their thing, I think, in like the vet's offices, it seems like if they're about a year old, then they'll just put the birth date down as whatever day they're in there, right? So they had his down as 3/10. It's like, this dog is no Pisces. And it's like, I fully believe he was about a year when they had him and took him in. But I'm pretty confident with this dog's personality, he is totally an Aries. He's all fire. Yeah. Anyway. Had like 3 other starts. I don't really know what I've talked about at this point in time or not. So it's just kind of rambling, which it's not really different than normal, I guess. But yeah. Today was the day that I was supposed to take my grandma for her haircut. And that came up last week. So for whatever reason, I decided instead of setting a hair appointment with the lady I feel like I'm supposed to move to, I went back with the one that everybody in my family goes to. Set an appointment with her. It's like, because this mess needs trimmed, and the bangs were driving me nuts, although I did trim them up a little bit better today. So, yeah, I don't know. It still needs help. And I have this awesome ridge. So, like, right down to here is the least processed shit. So this does whatever the hell it wants, but yes, I have this nice ridge around my head, and part of that is I pull my hair back a lot, or like half back. So yeah, but it's like that needs work, man. Maybe even a straightener. But yeah, like it's just so processed at the end that I need a haircut. So I set up an appointment with the one that was easy to set up the appointment with, right? And they have the online option. So I did that. And for some reason, I was over at my grandma's house the other day with my mom and the middle sister. And come to find out, my appointment was supposed to be at 11:30 today, and my grandma apparently had one set at 11. It's like, oh. Okay. Well, since it was just so convenient that I was going to be there too, they said, well, you could take her. It's like, I'm going, so I guess, but then paycheck situation didn't pan out quite as good as I had hoped, and I am confident that girl would not cut my hair for $10. So I canceled my appointment, like, I want to say Friday, after I realized it wasn't going to go that far, and it was just like, just whatever. Yeah, so I canceled my appointment. I think the girl, because she knew, I don't know that she knew it was for 2 different appointments. I think my aunt had set up an appointment for my grandma, and then I came in and was setting up an appointment for me, not knowing that my aunt had set one for my grandma. And there was a little bit of an overlap on the time frame. I know she knows there's a bunch of us that go to her, so and she said that it seems like we always are real close together when we do come in. And it's like, well, it's like I have the biggest, like, the span of time I go between haircuts is a lot more than all the rest of them, because like my grandma has really short hair and my aunt has chin to shoulder length, but she's a Leo. Leos are all about their manes. So yeah, she's very very active on getting her hair cut regularly. Yeah, I do it when it really, really needs it, and it really, really needs it right now, but I don't have the money, so have to wait till a couple weeks. I will. Yeah, but I canceled the appointment for me, and I think the girl canceled out both mine and my grandma's, because when my aunt was in there yesterday and talking to her, she said she didn't have any appointments down for us. And so my aunt was like, you're supposed to. And she sends me a message saying me and my grandma's appointments were at 1:30. It's like, no, I canceled mine. So I think that caused some confusion. But then there was more confusion because my mom was going with her friend to her friend's sister's old house. Her sister died back in the fall, and they're still trying to, tie up loose ends and all that stuff, I guess. So my mom was going to look at furniture. I don't know if for my grandma's house or for us or what, but she was going with her friend to the sister's house. And yeah. So she couldn't take my grandma. And so I told my mom and my aunt yesterday, it's like, I don't have an appointment anymore, so I have no need to go over there, but I can still take her, right? And then my mom talked to her youngest sister last night and was trying to talk her into taking my grandma to look at carpet, because they've got my grandma talked into getting new carpet in the house. Finally, it's like 30 years old or something. So, well, and the big thing that did it was there is it's like Berber carpet currently, and it's dead, beyond dead. And I have tried cleaning it several times, and it looks better when I've cleaned it, but at the same time, there's only so much the carpet cleaner can do for it, and it looks like shit. And my grandpa fell and cracked his face with everything else that, when he broke his femur back in August, and there was a blood spot on the carpet that will not come up. Like, everybody's tried multiple times and it's still there. It's like, it's time for new carpet. It's been time for new carpet, but we're just finally at the point where I guess she's seeing the value in that. Yeah. But anyway, since my mom had talked to her youngest sister about taking my grandma to look at carpet, I walked in the room and said something about the hair appointment, and my mom said, until I hear differently, plan on still taking my grandma to the hair appointment. As par for the course with my family, I go over to my grandma's house today with my mom's car, because that's the one she can ride in, and my aunt's over there. And I go in the house, it's like, so I guess you're running the hair appointment? And she says, yeah. It's like, okay. And I don't remember what she said. I was just like, she said, until I heard differently, plan on still doing it. And then I went over there, and it's like, clearly it doesn't fall on me anymore, but nobody fills me in. This is why I don't do things to help them unless I absolutely have to. Because there's so much confusion, nobody knows what anybody else is doing. But yeah, like my aunt said, she was there, and the other aunt was coming over to go with them to this appointment. It's like, okay. It's like, yeah, this is a whole lot of people, and I don't need to be here. But that's good, because I wanted to go do video, right? Not that any of them know that. They do not. Well, the middle sister knows that I have the video thing going, but honestly, she doesn't know what ends up most of the time. And that was the biggest thing that hit me yesterday, I think. Leave it. Did I see her or did I just talk to her? I don't know. I was talking to the one aunt, and my mom was talked or said something about her later. And okay, so I have mentioned that the problem with the family structure, and my stomach's making noises. Sorry if you could hear that. But yeah, like the problem with the family structure was, while my grandpa was around, he was basically sucking the life out of everybody else, energetically speaking, to prolong his life, because he was so afraid of dying that everybody was supposed to just cater to him, and ended up pretty much draining their life force energy trying to keep him around longer. And my mom was the prime example of that, because every time that man was in the hospital, she was there with him, and she would stay every night. He was at an actual hospital. Now, when he went to the nursing home for the rehab, then she would go home and be able to sleep in her own bed. And it really became noticeable to me, like the last couple times he went to the nursing home, that he wasn't able to live on his own. He was literally relying on the life force of the people that were catering to his every whim, to stick around longer. And I say that because my mom, my grandma, and my aunt were all really super spacey. And like, if I spent any time with them, I would feel that spaciness too. And it's like, it's literally sucking the life out of them, and he would go to the nursing home, be there for a night or two. The last time he wasn't even there a full 24 hours before he was back in the hospital. And we're all steamed up. He knows there's a car over there, but can't really see anything. Yeah. But anyway, the very last time, okay, Thanksgiving, they had it all set up where we were going to spend some time in their day room and have Thanksgiving dinner there with my grandfather, and everybody was coming and blah blah blah. And then this kid showed up. And before we even got there, like, I think the youngest sister and her family got there first. They were already talking about sending him back to the hospital at that point because he wasn't doing good at all. And hadn't died, but not sure how. Well, I mean, sucking the life out of everybody's how. But, then my mom would go and stay every night at the hospital, and it's like, and she wasn't able to communicate with anybody. She became like a Royal Space Cadet and like just dropping the ball on everything. And, then I finally sat her down in the waiting room that last time I was there to see him and said, at some point, it has to be okay for this man to die. And she took that to my brother, and I think, and told him that I was basically ready to have the vigil or whatever for my grandfather at that point in time. But, like when I was there in the room, when it was just her and my grandma, at least twice, I told them to knock it off when they were going into you can't go anywhere. What are we going to do without you? We can't do the things. We need you here to teach us things still. We're incapable of doing anything on our own. That kind of bullshit. And at least twice when it was just the four of us in the room, I said, that isn't helpful. Knock it off. Right? And they would stop until the next time, and then the other two sisters eventually got there, and when I went to leave, I made my mom go in the waiting room with me. I said, the fact that the man could not stay at the nursing home overnight is a sign that he's not doing this on his own. The only reason he's still here is because y'all are just pouring all your time and energy into him. And that's not healthy for various reasons, right? So, like, my mom was a Royal Space Cadet, and after my grandfather finally passed, it took some time before she got back to normal. I'd say she's back to normal now, but I'd say she is back to normal at the expense of those that, like my aunt, who is around her all the time, my grandmother, who won't do jack shit for taking care of herself, and she was my grandfather. Oh my gosh. Going back to that whole toxic family system. When he was in the hospital with COVID, back, it might have been this February 2021? I don't know. But he was there for 2 weeks, I think, and nobody could visit him except for the one aunt who still worked at the hospital and was able to pop in every now and then, very, very briefly, just to check on him and see if he needed anything. While he was there and out of the house, I was spending time with my grandma. And I would go over there and, we did this. Since my grandfather was gone, she had this 1,000-piece puzzle that it was a John Wayne puzzle that my mom had gotten him, and it's all like brown and white, and I could care less about John Wayne, to be honest. No offense if somebody out there is big into him. I don't care. But, yeah, so her big thing was 1,000-piece puzzles she couldn't do because her puzzle table isn't big enough. So, since he was gone, we cleared the kitchen table off and did the puzzle there. And I honestly don't know that she was putting forth much effort into it either. One of the things she said to me was, she told me the story about when she and my grandpa were first together early on, he came over to her house and apparently made the comment to my great-grandmother. Okay, my great-grandmother said something about what was he going to do to take care of her if something happened to him. And he made the comment of, what business does she have in staying around if I'm not there? So I'm pretty confident my grandma's always had the sense that she's not supposed to live outside of him living, and since she's still here now and he's not, that's a problem for her. And everybody that's fed into that toxic ideology, is just as much to blame for that. But, she allowed it. That goes to that whole boundaries piece. Like, the reason boundaries are so important is because literally people will suck the life out of you if you don't have them. And if you don't know what's yours and what's not, then you end up taking on other people's shit and feeling like it's yours to fix, and it's not. Speaking from experience, because this is literally the family that I, grew up in, and it's taken me to now to be able to see it for what it is and to realize, these deeper layers of what's going on. And, yeah. So, my aunts and my mom will have the conversations about, grandma's not eating unless somebody's over there and makes her eat. And, they've had the conversation of, she doesn't want to live. She doesn't want to live. She thinks she's not supposed to, because that's literally the entire time they were together. That was what she bought into. She didn't argue that point that, she should have a life or anything outside of him. She went along with it. So since she went along with it, that was the whole, basis of their entire relationship, was this idea that she's there to cater to his whims, and when he's not there anymore, she has no business being here either. So yeah, why would she want to keep going? On her end, she's kind of floundering because he's not here to keep her in line anymore. So yeah. But where that comes in, see, my mom, I've been noticing that she's kind of back to normal as far as, not having her brain leached out of her head by my grandfather's being in the hospital and her feeling she has to be there to cater to his every need. And I think part of that is what's going on with my aunt, because she is like super spacey, and I'm pretty sure that my grandma is that way too. I don't spend much time over there right now. Like this, this whole thing that I'm talking about is exactly why I will not go over there and spend just random time if it's not necessary, because they see it as, since I'm there, that means I'm back to being okay with this stupid system that's in place that I'm not okay with, and absolutely not going to be like sacrificing my brain cells for, and they just, yeah. So currently my aunt is the spacey one, and since my mom's back to normal, it's like, nah, yeah, this whole toxic system, and I've done some, I gave my aunt like a little bag of rocks and told her to keep it on her, and yeah, she won't do it. She's all into the Jesus mindset, and that you don't need anything else if you got Jesus. So yeah. So I have this tattoo. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Right in there. It says Jesus wept. And I got it. The reason I got it, I don't regret that one. I like that one. I don't regret any of them, to be honest. Even though I did cover one of them up, it wasn't because I regretted it. I had it there, and it meant something to me for a time, but then my perspective shifted and I got something else, but it still goes right along with the theme for that one. Anyway, so this one, Jesus Wept. I've been thinking about that a lot here lately. And when I first got it was linking with the idea of, okay, so that was, I think the story that comes in the Bible was when Jesus brought Lazarus back from the dead. And I think the point of it in the story was Jesus wept because they didn't know what he knew. He knew, this dude wasn't gone. And I think more importantly, that what's on the other side isn't all doom and gloom like a lot of people want you to think. I feel like when I sit with it now, it feels more like he probably knew all the shit that was going to be said and done in his name. And that was probably more aligned with what he was, or what he wept about, right? So, yeah. I talked the other day about how I told the class last week that I went to seminary. And when I talked to the one lady at dinner, she was asking me about it, because I had a couple people that were very interested in wanting to talk to me about that conversation, or about that whole thing. And what I told her, I think it really clicked for me personally when I was talking to her about it. It's like, because I've known that I had this thing, right? Got my Master's of Divinity in 2016. And what I was telling her, I got my TBI in 2013. So, traumatic brain injury, for those of you that aren't unaware of that. And I say that because I was so used to just saying TBI, because military and every other place that I've connected with where that's a common thing, people just naturally know it. But when I mentioned it to that lady the other day, she was like, "What's that?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, brain injury." And what I told her was I felt like the brain injury was a sort of like, I've long felt it was a reset point, because at that point I had to start using my voice. I had to start asking questions when things didn't make sense, because otherwise I didn't get jack when I was sitting in classes and all that stuff. Now, my whole experience, my entire educational career, like even way, way early on, seminary was where I had the highest GPA that I've ever had. And it was because I had to ask so many questions, and I was second guessing myself all the time. So I had to verify and, recheck all these things. But what I was telling her was I feel like it was also a reset on the conditioning, because it's like everything that I had taken on through my religious background, growing up and being any kind of connected to any kind of churches, and, over the years, what I picked up from people that went to churches or had background in church life. I felt like it jarred me out of the conditioning to where I could make sense of these other points, like stories that, we talked about being added few hundred years after Jesus' Jesus' life, whatever, that, were added in. And then I was like, I've heard this I've seen this used to bash so many people over the head, like the story of the woman at the well. That was the one. It was added 500 years later or something. I was like, what would possibly be the point of adding that story that I've seen actually used many times to bash people over the head with how bad they are? So it's like I started looking at things differently. And 3, 4, 5, 6. I feel like that was kind of the big point for me for the traumatic brain injury experience, as much as anything, was to jar me out of the conditioning so that I could really start paying attention to what I was meant to catch. Like that. And like there was the other one where we talked about how, the Hebrews didn't have this idea of this Satan figure, and there is like the word they had that Christianity nabbed and made something completely different was Hasatan something. It translates to the adversary. So it wasn't this separate demonic figure, and, of course, Christians go to that whole where Jesus said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." And it's like that whole adversarial thing, right? And it's like, it's literally like going back to the yin yang, the light and the dark, right? We all have both. Nobody is excluded from that. And most people don't want to sit with their shadow because they're afraid of what's in there. And I heard some little Christian kid on a YouTube thing talking about how bad meditation is and it gives the devil a chance to, get in there and blah, blah, blah. It's like, meditation brings to light the shit that needs to be worked through. If you have something that's standing in the way of keeping you from being a better version of yourself, that's when it's going to come up. And it might not be specifically while you're meditating. It might be a little bit after that, but maybe something that came up when you were meditating sticks with you and then kind of gets the wheels turning. And then one day it's like, oh, shit. And I feel like that was a big part of, what was going on with Ziva the past few days, is that the shadow aspect of myself, right? So this point where I absolutely love this dog to death, and I have mentioned many times the past few days, she has been with me literally through the hardest moments in my life. And I kept thinking about the fact that she's 12 and hoping that, she makes it to 15 or whatever. But I feel like the little health scare we had recently was, yes, to get me ready for that time when it does come, but also to help me see, it goes that sitting with the shadow, nourishing the shadow, as per the animal apothecary cards, sitting with the uncomfortable feelings and crying through the fact that I didn't want anything to happen to this dog, and I still don't want anything to happen to this dog. But realizing that there's a part of it that goes back to this piece where this dog has been with me through some of the very hardest moments of my life, and what's it going to mean for me when she's not there anymore. And when it first came up, it was absolutely terrifying. But as I sat with it and even talked through it on here, I feel like I'm able to see it differently. I feel like I also need to turn this car on. Oh, good. I left my keys in the pocket. Because it's kind of chilly now. But yeah, like, to sitting with that fear that is there for for what's going to happen when she's gone. Am I going to be okay when she's gone? Yeah. It'd be hard. Like that one's definitely going to be hard either way, but it's like, it still had to sit with it and realize that it's like, it's not going to bring everything to a halt for me. You know, life's going to continue on. You know, I think it kind of goes with that point of like that song, Fade In, Fade Out. It's like, that's basically how things kind of go, right? Because you fade into the world and, you know, you're trying to navigate and figure out who you are in the world and what you have to offer it. And then on the flip side, fading right back out and ending the cycle or bringing the cycle to a close and all that. But yeah, like sitting with the idea of her fading out on me, it's like, that's, you know, it's like a freaking punch to the gut. And it's really sitting with that fear, sitting with that uncomfortable feeling, sitting with the part where it brings you know, like the fear of what's going to happen when she's gone. Where does the fear come from? Well, I mean, partly because she's been here with me through my hardest moments, right? But then also, you know, I had Chance with me when I had some of my hardest moments before, and Chip before that. He would like me to know that he is still here. He just moaned at me. Yeah, and you know, just like all the times things didn't feel like they were okay, but then eventually they were okay. But it's like still the uncomfortable feeling of just new beginnings, you know, they just bring that anyway. It's, yeah, they're exciting because you never know what's going to happen, and it brings like all sorts of possibilities up. But at the same time, what if I can't do it? What if I find out I'm going to fuck something up and it's not repairable? You know, anything like that. It's like, those are the kind of thoughts that come up on this. And like, for me, Ziva was not feeling good was a trigger on that. And it's like, I have really spent a lot of time sitting with that whole idea. And like I've said, like, I fasted because I wasn't sure what to do with that. And I said I was fasting for clarity, and that's true. But at the time, it's like I did not feel clear at all. It's like grounding my energy back in, you know, being able to eat the regular foods again and all that stuff, and making more healthful attempts to do things to be in my body. This dog. Hi, buddy. Thank you. Oh, and this dog. Hi, this dog. Sister. Hey, Grammy sister. Yeah, I think she'll probably come up here. You can come up. Up, and she's up. She's up, and she's here. No, you're not coming up. But yeah, it's like you're sitting with the uncomfortable feelings, right? And so I fasted for clarity, and then it was like, as I've gotten back to my more normal habits, you know, eating the things again, and oh, don't put your butt hairs in my straw. I don't think she did, but she just got really close. Yeah, she's on my lap. Stop. You're fine. But yeah, like when I was sitting with that yesterday, and okay, when I started writing about it the other night, talking about Ziva, and then, you know, thinking through some of the stories that the times we've shared together, and putting that perspective in on the writing. Dude, he is so farty. Fours. Okay, 4 fours, as I said that. That's like, you're very distracting when you're panting on my lap, and you're gonna get me all fuzzy. Yeah. Hey, you're okay, dude. What was I saying? Oh, when I was writing, then I realized that, I can write about the good times and the hard times, but either one, like the fact that she's been there with me has kind of, even in the hard times, like she was kind of a little bit of a buffer for the fact that it was a hard time, right? And she was, a light moment at a very dark time. So as I was working through that, it's like, well, that gives me like a whole different route to go on this whole writing thing, and it goes back to like, okay, so I've showed the pictures that I have, the Hecate on my wall. She has come up a few times throughout my life, but I didn't really know anything about her. But then I saw this picture, and it was Hecate and her dogs, right? And then I started looking at like these different things, like just stories about her and the dogs, and they are with her going through hell or whatever, Hades or whatever. I probably mix up all my mythologies. But I know there's stories about it. And it's kind of funny because with my 3, since there are 3 of them, this would be the head and mouth. But I have called them mine Cerberus. Because of the 3-headed dog, since there's 3. And stop! I actually have a picture somewhere, it's probably on Facebook, from when I was in Alabama with them. It was right before we left. I was outside, and the windows in the house that we were in they were lower to the ground, so... Well, don't push it off when I'm trying to put water in it, dingus. Okay. So the windows were lower to the ground, so they could stand up and look straight out the window just on their flat feet. And I have a picture of them because they were all 3 in the window. And I started calling them Cerberus because it looked like a 3-headed dog. And yeah, so I had that, and then like my mom, dog, you are not that bad off. My mom, for a long time, has referred to my dogs as my hellhounds, and I think that's kind of along the mythology end too, because they were hellhounds, and she said that about them because they were kind of a pain in the ass. But then it's like, basically that was the purpose they were serving for me, was being with me basically as we were going through this hell of sorts. And yeah, we're about done. So anyway, I found this picture of this dark goddess with her dogs. And so I got it and I put it in a frame on my wall. And the frame that I got it for, actually it still has a picture. Okay, the frame that I originally was planning to put it in had this picture of Jesus there's some story about a little kid that drew the picture, and it's supposed to be more real than most of the, glorified white dude Jesuses that they have out there. Yeah, it's supposed to be more accurate to what he supposedly looked like or whatever. So that was the frame that I got it in. I was going to put it over this Jesus picture, and it's like, it didn't fit. So I did have one that it did fit in, but it was kind of funny because that actually had like this 10 commandments of, leave it. There's a dude walking. This van that's been here since we got back in the car. Nope. Okay, so the frame it ended up in was this, it had like a 10 commandments of marriage thing in it. It's like, yeah, I don't want that. Don't need it since I'm not married anymore, and yeah. And so that thing went in the burn pile, but the frame went to my dark goddess picture. And it's funny because like it is really, as I've been sitting with this whole deal with Ziva here lately and writing about that and realizing that it's like she is the thing that's, you know, basically, I mean, all these charming little numbers, and the little side-eye number back there, it's like they all were the buffer, right? They were a buffer for me and getting through a very difficult time and not taking on everything completely as my own and getting buried beneath it because of my lack of sense of worth at that point in time. And you know, and okay, so for this twin flame thing, it's like, this is a thing that I realize has literally been a huge part of my life, my entire life, right? I remember being 4 and having this idea posed as like, is this, you know, this ultimate love story? Is that something that I would want to make sure we're still on track for that, right? And I just remember being so excited and giggly and yes, and, you know, even though in the moment I just was sitting there on my knees staring at this movie with this little mouse singing the song, and I was like so captivated just by the words of the song and like the meaning of the song. It's like, you know, but like in this other space, like energetically speaking, just I see myself as this giddy little child, and yes, let's do that one, right? And you know, I've talked about how I feel like that was him checking in before he incarnated, because, you know, that's a big part of the journey is once he incarnates, then we're still connected, always still connected, but slightly shut off to me from that divine connection, divine access point that I had when I was little, and you know, we've talked in the inner path classes about, you know, like little kids and their imaginary friends. They're not imaginary. We just, you know, it's before they've been conditioned out of the belief of them, right? So I feel like that was my counterpart checking in before he incarnated to make sure everything was still on track. And you know, because it was I remember it being affirmed to me that this will be very hard if we choose to do this, but we can do this. And I was just like, the good things, yes, let's get to the love, right? And you know, I didn't realize that meant, you know, to really get to this unconditional and this like joyous experience of love would mean to go through life without any semblance of love, because you have, okay, as I've said many times, you have to learn everything you're not before you can learn that which you are, right? And so, you know, on that point, you have to learn everything love's not before you can learn everything love is. You It's like that's the whole purpose of the duality thing. It's like, okay, there's light and dark because you can't understand one unless you have the other to compare it to, basically. So so we have to go through these experiences, and we have to experience the negatives of things to realize the things that we're not. Okay, and the one thing that has been coming to mind here lately, and this was one of those points in times where my conditioning won, right? The conditioning of who I was supposed to be in the world, period, let alone in this new space that I found myself in. It was one of my first annual trainings with my guard unit, I think. And there was this dude who was kind of a dick and always kind of harassing anybody. That's just what he did. And there was a small group of us there, not a whole bunch of us at this space, but he decides to take it upon himself. This other guy went to the bathroom, so the dick, the dickhead, took it upon himself to go pee in this guy's drink. Nobody said anything, me included. Everything in me wanted to go over and kick that stupid drink and just like stomp everything out of it, but because of all my conditioning that said, that I wasn't supposed to make waves and I wasn't supposed to do these things right, to pull this asshole's attention to me, that wasn't something that I wanted to do. So I didn't say anything either. It's like, that goes to that point of how are these like atrocities able to happen? And it comes back to that, when the good ones don't say anything, so we're conditioned by this world that we're not supposed to make waves, we're not supposed to stand out, we gotta blend in and not draw attention to ourselves or whatever. And honestly, there was probably a part of me that was trying to avoid being the target of that guy's being an asshole, but because I've had plenty of encounters with bullies in my lifetime, that's my grandfather was one of them, and so my entire life was basically being on the receiving side of bullying. And then when this situation came up, it's like everything in me wanted to say something, and yet for whatever reason I did not allow myself to do it, because I was afraid to be the target of this guy's wrath or whatever, because I ruined his prank, ha ha ha, but nobody else did either. It's like, that doesn't make it any more right. Wrong is wrong one way or another, and if you don't stand up for the people you see getting shit on, then it's just going to make space so more people can get shit on in far greater ways. And my dad's had some church shit and Congress shit on TV the past couple of days. And yesterday, 3:33 on the clock, right as I'm talking about this, 3:33, and there's my little 3:2 over there. My dad had this church shit on TV yesterday, and this guy, he sounded hateful. Like, really. And he's just talking about how, people being all terrible to the Christians and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I was standing over there, and I heard this thing, and I was just like, because the Christians have it so bad. Well, the Christians, how are they going to ever survive? It's like, that whole conditioning piece, religion conditioning people to think they need somebody outside of themselves to save them. Religion, what was the other one? You need someone outside of yourself to save you, and you're not supposed to make waves and do the things, blah blah blah. And I was just like, oh, the Christians, and then some fucking asshole was bringing the Christians into this political bullshit. And it's like, oh, because the Christians have it so badly again, boo hoo hoo. It's like, okay, I would like to go back to that point of mentioning that history is written by the ones who've won. The losers don't get to write those things, and how Christianity is permeated through everything right now. It's like, that is a sign of, that goes to that whole point of, okay, let's talk about like the body systems, right? And cancer is an overgrowth of cells, okay, I'm not a medical doctor or anything, but I had enough classes. I remember hearing something about cancer is basically just an overgrowth of otherwise good cells, but they got out of where they're supposed to be, right? So that's kind of like, if you consider us all a part of the divine body that is God, that is all that is. We are all a part of the divine. So the fact that we have this one part that is literally going through and trying to keep people locked into the dualities, and goes back to that united we stand, divided we fall. If they can keep us divided within ourselves first, we can't stand up against the bullshit they're feeding us, right? So to come to terms with, if you're here, you're supposed to be here, period. If you're encountering something and it's everything about the situation makes you feel like there's something wrong there, it's because there is, and we've been so conditioned that we're not supposed to make waves, we're not supposed to stand out and stand up for others. I mean, there's little stories where where you get the little guy standing up against the big guy, whatever. We get little hints of that along the way, but then the conditions that don't allow for us to be able to make moves in that direction. So, So it's like the fact that I didn't take it upon myself to go kick that guy's drink and stomp everything out of it before the dude had a chance to come back to it and find out the hard way. It's like, that was exactly the kind of situation that allows the assholes to win out over the little guy, right? So because there aren't enough of us stepping into our power and, well, enough, because it's taken so long, because we've had all these bad ideas enforced upon us constantly, that's made us doubt ourselves when we want to stand up against somebody doing an asshole thing that's exactly why we have the government we do currently, why we have, religious institutions as prevalently everywhere as it is. It's basically a cancer to the divine system. It is one facet. Yes, it can be a good thing if it brings you closer to God, but if all it does is to make you feel like you have some sort of right or obligation to trash talk others and, beat other people down because you're supposed to rely on somebody outside of yourself to save you, thus that's the point at which it's become a cancer and it's not serving a good purpose. The biggest one that came to mind for me on that one, like when that point came to me, was when we had this little vape shop pop up. And don't you know, within like no time at all, there was a church planted right next to it. It's like, ugh. It's like you get the little thing that pops up in case somebody wants to have fun, and then next to it there's going to be a church or something religious-y popping up so they can go save you by telling you how bad you are, and you're going to hell if you don't come over here instead of going over there and all that shit. And fuck that noise. Fuck it all. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out if there's anything that I didn't wrap up on that, or any other points I wanted to handle. I will say, when I finished my video the other day, it was like shorter than normal, and I think it was the one where I was bitching about the CDs. I finished it, and one of my twin songs was on the radio. Like, as soon as I turned the car on there, it was like, maybe not the first note, but real quick. It's like, yay. So, it's like, for me, the whole twin flame thing has been like the biggest motivating piece to keep me moving forward and, healing the painful stuff in me so it can no longer be used against me, kind of a thing. Like, that whole story is one, I'm not proud of that at all. And everything in me has always wished that I would have stood up for the kid that got his drink pissed in. But I didn't, and that failure has stayed with me because that's exactly what lets the assholes win. That's what lets the people who shouldn't be in charge be in charge. And it's because the failure to stand up against it. But there again, it's like that's the point of the twin flame journey for me, it's the thing that, in spite of my shortcoming and in spite of the fact that I've fallen short all these other ways along the way, there's still something more for me, and the pull to that, that draw to this unconditional love is so strong that that's literally the thing that's kept me moving. And I've talked on here that I've kind of turned in on myself many times, and I absolutely have. And, my dogs were there with me to help me navigate those experiences. But here too, it's like this twin flame thing is the thing that makes me not be able to stay in hiding. Because had I not, had it not been for the twin flame journey, I wouldn't have got to that point where I realized that he had to be in a spotlight so I could find him, but then how was he ever going to be able to find me? And that's stepping into who I'm here to be, and, deeper levels of myself, better levels of myself, saying the things that are going to piss a lot of people off one of these days. And like I said, that is exactly why my videos start so slow at the beginning, is because by the time I get fired up and get to the stuff at the end, it's like, well, you're going to have to have sat it out to stick with me on this whole journey before I get to that point, because otherwise you probably aren't ready for that point either. But if you can make it to this point, then yeah, things are happening. And I think that's the kind of the most interesting thing about like all of it, is just like seeing, okay, I don't pay attention to the news or anything like that. I hear people in passing mentioning things or whatever, but aside from that, I actively avoid all of it, because I don't want that feeding into keeping the conditioning alive for me, right? And so as I set that aside, you know, kind of brush that off, if you will, then I can focus on what I need to be focusing on. And it's being more confident in who I am and what I'm here to do, and owning my faults and my shortcomings with the intention of moving in a favorable direction on healing those things and standing up against the larger play out of people not standing up for what's right when they should, right? Or giving somebody an example of, finally, we're going to stand up for some things and not just take whatever abuse comes our way from those that are telling us we're not supposed to shine brightly or whatever. You know, we're gotta, yeah. No, going back to that. Okay, I don't have to have this song play out loud anymore. All I have to do is have my little headphones on and bring that Apage, Satana on. Rotting Christ. Play that on my headphones, and I'll just play it on repeat and walk into the room. And I think politics was on TV yesterday when I walked in the room with that on, or with that playing in my headphones, and I wasn't even in there like 20 seconds, and my mom looks at my dad and says, "Can you find something else? Can we turn this off?" And then like he went to something that was like nature stuff, and it's like, see, that is perfect. Why don't we play more of that? I don't care if people are telling stories about Bigfoot or whatever over the top of it. That's irrelevant. Give us something pretty to look at. At least it's not the bullshit from politicians and religious figures. Because I don't need any more of that in my life. But anyway, things are getting ready to get interesting. In the meantime, I guess I'm going to wrap this up, since I'm about, you know, a little over an hour. Don't want to. Here's my little buddy. Yeah. But I'd say this is long enough for today. As always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.